PIB guides, and these are all partnership for international birding guides with a lot of experience throughout the United States and Canada, and quite a few trips in the western part of the United States and Arizona. Chris Charlesworth has been an enthusiastic birder for most of his life, with over 30 years experience as a birder and over 20 years experience as a professional bird guide. He has led groups mostly from Canada and the UK and Arizona. And he has led something like, he says 15, but I bet you it's closer to 20 birding trips. Chris guides for us throughout the ABA area, and he is currently the North American, USA, and Canada Operations Director. David Trentley has foolishly worked for me for over a decade. He's been a professional bird guide for over two decades. David guides for us throughout the ABA area. He is the former North American, USA, and Canada Operations Director. He's trying to slow down his busy birding life, and I'm not making it a very easy thing. But David loves every chance he can get to bird in the southwest part of the United States, including Texas, Arizona, and New Mexico. And then on the call as we speak is Jesse Huth, who's just coming off a birding trip in New Mexico. Jesse guides throughout the ABA area. His real love and focus is birding in the Southwest, including Texas, Arizona, and New Mexico. He just wrapped up a New Mexico trip. He's got something like 3 Texas trips between now and about February or April. He has 1 Arizona trip sold out in early May of 2022. Jesse is kind of our birding guide at bat in Arizona. And he's got dates awaiting in late May and 2 dates in August 2022. So with no further ado, I will turn the call over to Chris Charlesworth. Go, my friend.
All righty, thanks, Chuck. We are talking Southeastern Arizona today, and arguably that's one of the most popular destinations for birding in North America for various reasons. Probably a lot of it is that several species kind of creep into the ABA area from the south, from Mexico, and they're most easily findable there in southeastern Arizona. First thing I'll do is just pull up a little map here, and we can check it out. So the southeast of Arizona, as far as birders kind of go, is this little square from Tucson and down into the corner here. This is the southeastern bit of Arizona, and like Charles said, we're going to cover 5 locations here today, and just chat about them, what the spots are like, what kind of birds or mammals you might see. We kind of travel from, there's these sky islands. I don't know if you've heard the term sky islands, but these mountain ranges that kind of pop up out of the middle of nowhere in the deserts of Arizona. And each of these sky islands has its own selection of special birds that you have to go to that particular spot to see. So we're gonna go through the sky islands and talk about what we might get there. The first one we're going to do is the Mount Lemmon and the Santa Catalina Mountains, and that one is just on the northern side of Tucson there. So that will be first. Then we're going to head down about an hour south of Tucson into the Santa Rita Mountains and talk Madeira Canyon, which is quite maybe one of the more popular destinations in southeastern Arizona. Patagonia is another spot. It's not really mountainous right in Patagonia, but there's some fantastic spots we can chat about there. Over to the Huachuca mountain range by Sierra Vista, and then we're going to finish off in the Chiricahuas up by Portal. So that sort of gives you a little idea of what part of Arizona we're talking about here. First of all, I'm going to send it over to David Trentley. He's going to talk Mount Lemmon and the Santa Catalina Mountains. So go ahead, David.
All right, thank you, Chris. Welcome to our talk about birding in Southeast Arizona. So as Chris showed on that map, Mount Lemmon and the Mount Lemmon is the tallest mountain in the Santa Catalina Mountains, and the mountains are form like an east-west border on the north side of Tucson. The mountain is the highest peak in the Santa Catalinas, and it gets up to over 9,000 feet in elevation. So when you're starting at the base, you're at about Tucson levels, about 2,000 feet elevation. So you go over 7,000 feet in elevation as you drive up Mount Lemmon. The good thing about it is there's a road, the Catalina or Mount Lemmon Highway, that you can drive up. I think it's about 35 miles of driving that takes you from the Sonoran Desert, where you can find all the saguaro cactus and ocotillo and cholla, a lot of different kind of cactus. Then you start driving up the mountain, you get away from the cactus, and eventually you get into pines and spruce and fir, like ponderosa pines. It's typically stated that a drive up Mount Lemmon is like going from the Sonoran Desert, like from Mexico to Canada in one day, because when you get to the top, you're in habitats and birds that are found much farther north. So let's go with the next slide. So this is kind of what you see when you're getting ready to start the road up Mount Lemmon. It's beautiful scenery. This is the Sonoran Desert. You can see the saguaro cactus and then the cliff sides. So it's a very picturesque place. If you're not a birder, you still enjoy the scenery. You certainly take a lot of photos. But when you're down at the bottom here, you're seeing a lot of the birds that are typical of the Sonoran Desert. Things like Gambel's quail, cactus wrens, black-tailed gnatcatchers, Thrasher, and then let's see the next slide. Gila woodpecker and gilded flickers are more that are found at the lower elevations. And then let's go to the next slide. Okay, then as you start driving up, if you look down in the background there, that I assume is Tucson, and here you're up already above the Sonoran Desert part. You're not really in cactus anymore, but there's a lot of rocks, rocky sides on the road here, and in these rocks you find some special birds like the canyon wren and rock wren, of course. There's a rock wren. Do you have a canyon wren next, I think? Yeah, okay, the canyon wren. You often hear them before you see them, and they have that downward whistle. Beautiful song echoing off the canyon walls as you're driving up Mount Lemmon. Go to the next slide. Another nice view of what you see when you're up there, getting up a little higher elevation here. From here, you'd probably see white-throated swifts flying around. Okay, next slide. Then as you move up farther, you start getting into a whole new type of vegetation. So you're out of the Sonoran Desert types and above all the cactus, and you start seeing some of these interesting songbirds that a trip to Arizona is welcome. You see Grace's warblers, there should be bridal titmouse, Buick's wren, crystal thrashers, Mexican jays, acorn woodpeckers, Rufus crowned sparrows, and some black chin sparrows show up there as well. We have next slide. It's another warbler. Of course, red face warbler is a highlight of the trip. You start seeing this about mid elevation or higher. Next. Higher up the mountain, when you start getting into some of the coniferous trees, you might start finding these yellow-eyed juncos. There's painted redstarts up there, and greater peewees, violet-green swallows. What's next? Slide. Western bluebirds. Next slide. There's a bridal titmouse. Next slide. Mountain chickadee, those are found up in the somewhat higher elevations. Next slide, red-breasted nuthatch. So you're starting to get birds that nest in Canada and the northern United States, like the red-breasted nuthatch, and probably find some pine siskins, Cassin's finches, evening grosbeaks sometimes. What's our next slide? The pygmy nuthatch. Next slide. Steller's jays. Is that the last slide? Okay, yeah. So,
Last one,
so when,
yeah.
when you're up at the top, some of the other birds that you see there that you will you're not likely to see down in Tucson itself, like broad-tailed pigeons, and some what's the
Band-tailed
band-tailed pigeons. Yeah, I'm thinking broad-tailed hummingbirds you'll see up near the top, and Rivolis Hummingbird. That's one that used to be called the magnificent hummingbird. They'll be found at feeders up near the top of the mountain, and that's just a little description of some of the birds as you go up. You do get a whole new species list as you move from elevation to elevation. It's really an interesting start to your trip. It's worth a full day of birding. If you have the chance, I do recommend you spend one day there, and that's about all you really need.
Nice.
All right.
David, thank you very much. Any questions out there from the participants and or other guides? Anybody got anything to add? Any questions out there? I'm looking at the text. Here's our first question. I'm wondering if the drive up has cliffside roads like Denali. A great question. Yeah, so I mean, we experience this a lot in Colorado, higher montane areas. I mean, are there roads that go right up to the cliffside where you look off to the left side of the car and it's just a 200-foot drop, or is it less of that kind of thing? I assume there's some of those kind of spots.
Want me to answer that, or David?
Yeah, shoot.
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
I mean, yeah, there are spots where you kind of look down and your stomach might fall out of you, but it's there's good barricades along the edge, and it's really an impressive highway that they built. But yeah, all the people I've taken up there, some people, occasionally I get people, often from the UK, where I guess there really aren't any mountains, or they're not used to this, but they get a little nervous of the drive. But it's a totally good road, well paved, lots of good pullouts for lots of viewpoints along the way up, and yeah, it's very safe.
It's not like Denali, where there are times when you just are almost panicking. If you're on the side of the bus that's at the edge, you don't want to look down because there is no shoulder. I mean, there's a couple feet to the left of the bus and then it's straight down. There's nothing like that on Mount Lemmon Highway.
No.
Gotcha. Thanks for that question. Any other good questions out there, folks? Any other questions from David or Jesse or Chris?
No.
All right.
There's some interesting mammals up there too, if you're into mammals.
Oh yeah, let's throw that out there, man.
I often see the I don't know if it's Abert squirrel or the tassel-eared squirrel, which people get a kick out of that one. And there are signs as you go up to watch for bears. I've never seen one there, but you see deer and various other things. I don't know if it's normal, but I've seen a Montezuma quail right at the top, which I thought,
wow, what the heck? That's crazy.
Bizarre, but
that is bizarre.
Yeah,
but why not?
Why not?
Holy moly! I've never wonder what the reports are up there. And we were just talking about Christmas counts before the chit chat, and I just thought, God, it would be so fun to participate in a Christmas count in Southeast Arizona. Just nice to see things like Untitled Tit Mouse. I mean, it's just birds that I love. And that's one of them, outside of the fact that I'm always a sucker for a good hummingbird. With no further ado, Chris, let's jump to the next geographic spot. Who's up next, sir?
I'm doing the next.
All right, man.
I'm doing the next three. So we're off to Madeira Canyon. Now, this Madeira Canyon is in the Santa Rita Mountains. That's about an hour south of Tucson, roughly. The nearest town is, the nearest place people normally stay there is Green Valley. And it's maybe one of the most well-known birding spots in the U.S., or at least in southeastern Arizona. So it's always on people's itineraries for this part of the world. As you head to Madeira Canyon, it takes, I don't know, the road up there takes half an hour, 20 minutes to get into the canyon itself, but we're going through some desert, some Sonoran desert on the way, especially Florida Wash, which is, I guess, Florida. It's spelled like Florida, but it's pronounced Florida. And it just basically means full of flowers. in Spanish. But we stop here in Florida Wash to look for some desert birds such as this Rufus winged sparrow, and they vary from year to year in abundance. So some years they're quite common, other years they're a tougher one to get. But I don't think I've ever missed it down there before. So it's a Rufus winged sparrow. Other things you might catch there in Florida Wash include the little bird with a name that's longer than the bird itself, the northern beardless tarantulet. You can find them in Florida Wash. There's also a little sort of a canyon next door to Madeira called Florida Canyon. And over the years, anyway, it's been one of the better places in the ABA to see this Rufus capped warbler, which is a rarity down there. So it's a good spot to take a look. It's a little bit of a walk, but it's a nice walk. You go through ocotillos and different kinds of cactus, and there's things like Scott's orioles and Cassin's kingbirds and canyon towies, and it's a nice place even if you don't run into the Rufus capped warbler. The elegant trogon. This is probably, like, I would say, the most sought after bird in southeastern Arizona, in that everywhere you go, somebody is asking you, have you seen a trogon? Have you seen a trogon? Everybody wants info on where the trogons are. So Madeira Canyon typically is one of the better places to find elegant trogons. This one's a male with all that nice red underneath. And they're just found in a few of those sky islands down in southeastern Arizona. It's interesting though. So you've got the Santa Rita Mountains just south of Tucson, and then you've got the Santa Catalina Mountains on the north side of Tucson. And I guess the trogon never shows up in the Santa Catalinas. So it's kind of limited to these canyons and mountains that are a little further south. So the habitat in Madeira Canyon itself is what they call Madrean pine oak forest. It's a mix of different pines and live oaks, and it's got quite a nice variety of species we can look for, including the hepatic tanager, this one here. Hepatic, I guess, meaning of the liver. So apparently this is a liver-colored bird. I assume that's what it means. But you get these hepatic tanagers mixed in with little flocks of Plumbeus vireos and bush tits and bridled titmice, and they're all hopping around there in lower Madeira Canyon. There's lots of nice spots to stop in there, lots of little accesses, trails. It's really well set up. An acorn woodpecker, which is pretty conspicuous wherever you've got some oak trees. And Madeira Canyon's got a couple of really nice feeders. The Santa Rita Lodge has feeders, and nearby there's a spot called the Kubo Cabins, and they both got feeders. And so you can just sit there and watch a lot of really cool birds come right in and feed right in front of you, get good photographs. Get Mexican jays coming in. They're always in sort of noisy flocks. And hummingbirds, David was mentioning the Rivolis hummingbird, which was formerly known as the Magnificent, but there was a split. So now the Rivolis is the one we get in the US, and this is a male. And you get them easily in Madeira Canyon at the feeders, along with other species like black-chinned, broad-tailed Annas, broad-billed, and sometimes rarer ones as well, if we're lucky. After dark, Madeira Canyon sort of becomes alive with night birds. It's one of my favorite spots on a southeastern Arizona tour to go and look for owls and night birds. This particular one's a whiskered screech owl, and it's one we find quite readily in Madeira Canyon. They do an interesting sort of a Morse code call that you can hear in the lower canyon once it's dark. And it's a really great place to find elf owls. In fact, there are a couple of known cavities that elf owls, I guess, spend the day in and nest in. And birders just kind of gather outside these cavities at dusk, which whenever I'm there is around 7 p.m., and wait for the little elf owl to poke its head out of the hole. So it's a good place to catch an elf owl. This one I was lucky to get in the daytime, a Mexican whippoorwill, but usually it's one we tend to just hear after dark. But on some of the various trails at Madeira Canyon, if you're lucky, you can spot a Mexican whippoorwill in the daytime. There's a lot of nice trails in there. Some of them are a little, steeper. But the nice thing about Madeira Canyon and a lot of these other spots that we're going to talk about today is that if you don't want to go on the hike, you can just sit back and watch the feeders and take it easy and let the birds come to you. So that's something nice about Madeira Canyon. I was just going to mention that the mountain range there, the Santa Ritas, the highest peak is Mount Wrightson. And again, that's over 9,400 feet. So it's quite a high peak. And that does it for Madeira Canyon. If there's any questions on Madeira Canyon?
Okay, this is Chuck Thornton Colby here. Hey, a couple things I wanted to throw out there. Let's see here. So far we've mentioned about 8 or 9 hummingbird species. The total tour we typically get 10 to 12. Jesse, I think you're the last one who ran a tour there, and I know you had a good trip because it was about a year ago. Maybe it was 2 years ago, but how many hummingbird species did you get? Do you remember it all, Jess? On the entire
off
tour?
The top of my head, it was, I think, a dozen.
Yeah.
About what we got. We got the barreline and the blue-throated and white-eared showed up, so it was all around a good hummingbird trip.
Right. And you got the plain cap starthroat, I do believe.
Yes. Yeah.
Which to me is a bird I'd love to get in the ABA area. So there you go.
Nice one to hang around for the tour.
I truly, I've been a birding tour company owner for, 16, 17 years now. And, I always feel great when one of my tours gets a bird that I would just love to see, because it just gives me hope. And there you go. Plus, I just love the fact that our clients are seeing such great birds. And then you spoke a little bit about elevation, and you talked about the highest peak. The highest point that we really bird in Madeira Canyon area is probably about 4,500 feet, Chris?
Yeah. You don't go
that high, right? Even when we go hiking, it's like
there's a paved road up through the canyon that goes up probably to about the top of 4.
Right. And the typical birding trip, we go hiking for about a mile to maybe chase a rarity, and maybe that's a 300 or 400, 500 foot climb, right?
Yeah.
So
you go pretty slow in there too.
Right, exactly. So we're going slow. It's not that hard.
Yeah.
I truly don't know of any birders who've not made any of those hikes, but we always like to have that worked out.
It's always nice because I occasionally do have people that just want to sit and watch a feeder. And take it easy for a little bit. So it's a nice option.
Sure. And though we have to go near the top of Mount Lemon, right? When we're in the Santa Catalinas, David.
Yeah, but that's all by car. I didn't mention
so that's
that you don't walk
peasy.
very much if you don't want to.
Right. No. I've been up there with my 8-year-old kid, and truly, I think I got everything without walking more than like 20, 30 minutes from the car. So, and that was right at the top. So it was an easy, mostly flat walk. And there you go. Any other questions? Anything else to add, guides or people? Oh, we've got a couple questions here. Oh, wow. Look at this one. Any danger in being close to the Mexican border? God, I have never experienced anything that feels like danger birding in either Southeast Arizona or in the Rio Grande Valley in Texas. And I think David, Jesse, and Chris would agree with that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, same here. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean,
I've even camped down in California Gulch, which is like less than a mile from the border, and didn't feel uncomfortable at all. Didn't encounter anything except for a good amount of border patrol along the road on the way in. But no, I've never felt threatened at all being down there.
Right. And I mean, I've heard stories of, I think most of the people crossing the border issues is a nighttime activity. But even at night at Madeira Canyon, I've never heard anything. So there you go. David, you got more to add there, bud, or none at all?
Just anybody who might be coming illegal, they're going to stay away from these not populated, but areas that people visit. So not something to really worry about.
Point taken. Wow, here's a good question. Since you are naming birds seen at night, is there an overnight stay there somewhere? Oh yeah, so in Madeira Canyon, we actually stay right at the Santa Rita Lodge. And truly within, the parking lot, there's a little campground that must be, a half mile away from the St. Ana Rita Lodge. I've both camped in the campground and I've stayed at St. Ana Rita Lodge. And truly the funny thing about the campground is at night you hear all these owl calls, and it's never clear if you're hearing an owl or another birder playing tape. I don't know if you guys would agree with that. I think you've camped there as well, right, Jesse?
Yes. Yeah, and I did find a Western Screech Owl there that was tooting away at me that I tracked down to determine it was actually up in a tree. And that would be a very dedicated birder to sit up in the tree and play tape.
Right, exactly. But there's just so much owl sound in that campground. It's unbelievable. But yeah, so we do stay right in the canyon, actually. To answer that question, boy, I think I have another question here. People are getting me. I really do appreciate the question here. Oh, this is a question that goes back to David, I think. How far up the road are the Grace's Warbler and the red-faced Warbler on the St. Ana Catalina's Day? Ballpark it, buddy.
Ooh.
Maybe
at least halfway up. Chris, what do you think?
Yeah, so you get the Graces, maybe halfway up, you start getting them in you get into a place called Bear Canyon, which
it's probably 5,000 or 6,000 feet or something.
Yeah, and Graces show up a bit lower than the red.
Right.
I get up a little higher, and then you start getting the red-faced and olive warbler, which is another one I didn't talk about yet. But
yeah, I mean, Graces in Colorado seem to start at like 5,000-ish feet. So I think both of them at 5-6, and I've seen red-faced in Guatemala at a similar altitude. So they are higher altitude birds, but not like super high. To answer that question, we talked about cliff size. We got warblers. We got border concerns. I think that's all the questions. Any other questions out there, folks? These are good ones. They're all very welcome. And again, during these question signs, you can unmute and ask questions if you would like to, but I do appreciate the text and I'm happy to share anything more. So again, more questions are welcome, but I think we'll move on to the next geographic area. Thanks.
Okay. All right. Now we're off to Patagonia. This is a little bit to the east of Madeira, sort of the southeast of Madeira Canyon, and it's just a little town kind of out in the grassland and desert. It's a funky little like one-horse town with a saloon and a spot where you can tie up your horse. And there's one lodge there called the Stage Stop Inn. So it's kind of got a bit of character, this town, little galleries, and quite a few birders live there as well, or spend the part of the year there. It's along the Santa Cruz River. And a couple of the main highlights of the Patagonia area include the Patagonia Roadside Rest Stop. I'm not sure if you've heard of this, but it is a well-known, it's just a little pull-off on the side of the highway west of Patagonia with a little wood or a concrete picnic table. And I think it might have been in maybe the 70s that some birders found couple of North American firsts there, like yellow grosbeak and maybe black-capped gnatcatcher. So birders started going there to look for these rarities, and in turn they started finding more rarities, and so that phenomenon became known as the Patagonian picnic table effect. I've been there, seen lots of cool birds, never found a rarity to add to the list, unfortunately, but we do stop there, and for me anyway, it's maybe the best spot to find thick-billed kingbirds, which is another specialty of that area down there. Let's see here, let's go into some slides. Another spot that's also a bit west of Patagonia is Patagonia Lake State Park. And of course, anywhere where you've got some water in the desert, you're going to get some birds. And that's certainly true at Patagonia Lake State Park. It's a 265-acre man-made reservoir that was initially made in the 60s for fishing and water skiing, but it has become an important spot for wildlife, and probably the most reliable site in southeastern Arizona for this bird, the neotropic cormorant. But you see all the various herons and egrets and things like a few ducks and grebes there as well. So it's a good spot to stop and boost your list up a little. Everybody probably knows this one, vermilion flycatcher. It's probably one of the most beautiful birds down there, and they're really common at Patagonia Lake State Park. So good place to see them. There's a shot of the thick-billed kingbird at the roadside rest stop. Now another highlight of Patagonia is the Pattons Center for Hummingbirds. So a couple live there, the Pattons. They've passed away, both of them, but their property has become I guess they left it to the birds. And I think Tucson Audubon Society has had a part in keeping the place going, but they've got volunteers that stay at this house and keep the feeders up to date. Lots of hummingbirds, and it's the best spot, as far as I know, in the USA to find this one, the violet-crowned hummingbird. It's probably their specialty bird at the Pattons place. But it's great. You go there, there's feeders in the front, there's feeders in the back. They've got this nice seating area set up in the shade. It's a very comfortable spot. I often take my groups there in the afternoon after lunch, and some of them are watching birds and some of them are falling asleep in the shade. It's a comfortable spot to sit yourself for a little while and see what comes in. But this is probably their signature bird there, the violet-crowned. Lots of black-chinned hummingbirds there as well. One of the more common hummers down in that area. There's just a shot of some birders sitting and enjoying the feeders. It's not just hummingbirds. You got other things coming in as well. You got curved-billed thrashers, and you've got canyon towhees and green-tailed towhees and lark sparrows, and quite a variety of things coming into those feeders. Sometimes a rarity if you're super lucky. Ladder-backed woodpeckers, pretty regular at the feeders as well. Well, not just in Patagonia, but pretty much anywhere down in that part of the world. You're going to run into Gambel's quail. And it's one of the best spots I know of to go see yellow-breasted chats, because they come out to the oranges. They put out orange halves down there, and the chats love to come out and sit right in the open, which is kind of unusual for chats, and nibble on these oranges. Another spot there in Patagonia that's certainly worth a visit is the Patagonia Sonoida Creek Preserve. So there's this large area of riparian habitat with lots of cottonwoods along the Santa Cruz River, and it's a really nice spot to go for a walk and see some birds. Some of the targets in there that I can think of off the top of my head are like varied buntings, which is a good target, and hooded orioles, and it's a great place for gray hawks, really good for them. And again, the odd rarity, they had on one of my trips, we had a Sinaloa wren in there, which was a very good ABA bird. So that's Patagonia for you.
Yeah. I don't know if I'm unmuted here. I will check. Oh, I am talking. I've never had anybody use their raise their hand feature ever on our video conferences, and some kind person, Joyce, if you want to unmute and ask a question, we would love to hear it. You can or you can text it, or anybody else got any questions out there? Just
sorry.
ask a question. Yeah,
sorry, I was just messing around with that.
Okay.
I wasn't sure what. Sorry.
Well, now we know. I think Caroline has a question. Caroline, if you have a question, be sure to unmute and ask away.
Okay. In my screen, David Trembley's picture is in the middle of the birds, and I want to know how to move over and see the birds instead of David's lovely face.
I always just swipe David away. I think you can literally click on that and move it over.
Drag it over.
And
trying, and I'm not able to do that.
Yeah, we'll have to troubleshoot that later, I'm afraid to say. There will be a full video conference recording available that you can look at it without David's picture in the middle.
Okay.
And truly every little system works a little different. So I'm not good at technical tweaks here in the middle of the call, but I appreciate the call. Any other good questions out there? Thank you very much. And if not, I'm going to ask David and Jesse a question. What other good birds have you guys gotten in the Patagonia area? I mean, I literally remember sitting at the Patagonia feeders and hearing a gray hawk shriek away, and then that was like my lifer gray hawk or my ABA gray hawk. Any other good birds you guys remember down in that direction, David or Jesse?
Well, yeah, there's lots of great stuff. I've had the black-capped gnatcatcher at the Patagonia picnic table. It showed up there and was fussing around, and I've actually identified it by sound first. Heard it up there. They have a very distinct meow call that they give, so I found that. And then, of course, after chasing unsuccessfully the Rufus-capped warbler up and down trails on previous days of the trip, I showed up just near the Patton's feeders, and right down the road there was one that we found on the side of the road, Rufus-capped warbler, just sitting there.
Hi, Jesse. I think we lost you.
Across the road. Hello?
I've got Jesse.
Yeah.
I've got him, Leo.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jesse.
Okay. Well, and that was basically it. But then, of course,
Jesse,
the one you mentioned earlier, the plain-capped starthroat was there.
Yeah. Hey, Leo, I've got Jesse, no problem. Leo, it may be your system that's farting out there, buddy. Oh my, oh my, oh my. Hey, and just know, Carolyn, who asked that question about the screen thing, I did just text you the solution. Some other kind person on the group knew the answer. What about that? Thank you, people, for helping each other out. Any other good questions out there? Or David, what any other good birds you've had down in? I mean, Patton's Feet Eaters is absolutely amazing. Just beyond the violet crowned hummingbird, and it's truly the only place I've seen that bird in the ABA area. There's just always good stuff buzzing by. It's unbelievable. Hearing no other questions. Oh yeah, shoot.
I have a question.
Great.
I'm wondering if you can clarify what times of year we're likely to see the birds that you're listing off here, because I've been several different months of the year, and sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not so good.
Yeah, I'm going to answer that question. And I saw your question texted and I forgot to answer it. I apologize. So, I've had really good success with early migration there in late March, but I think the best birding tours are basically sort of April, Mayish. And then it gets, there's hot weather down there, but it's really the montane areas are not so bad. And then there's sort of a second, with climate change, everything's a little farty, but or not as reliable as it once was. But sort of August can be really good for a lot of stuff. There's a couple birds that are easier in sort of April, May than in August. But I think that kind of answers that question. Chris, would you agree with that assessment?
Yeah, I'd say April, May is your peak, but then I know a lot of people do go there in August for the monsoons because it sort of is a burst of bird activity with the rains.
Yeah. And I've had just great luck in both those time frames. And I have to say the one late March trip I took there was a family trip. And I don't know that I think late March is a little early, to tell the truth. Jesse, David, you guys got more to add to that ever complicated question of scheduling?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah.
Last year it was really, really dry, and they didn't really have much of a monsoon season, so that's something to watch for, but hopefully that will change.
Yeah.
Like sometime in the near future, because the birds need that as much as the birders need it.
Right on. Any other questions before we go? Oh, how's the inner bird watching? We've never run a trip there in the inner time, but a lot of these birds are there year round. The stuff that migrates in, what birds are not there in the inner time, guys? I don't actually know the answer to that question. I know painted redstarts are like they migrate in. Hutton's Vireo migrates in. Yeah, what's not there in the inner time? That's actually a good question.
Thick-billed bird, perhaps.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I
like
just
sparrows. It's a good time to go.
Yeah.
Winter, it's a good time for sparrows and sandhill cranes.
It's also not a bad time for rarities, in the winter.
Yeah, and as crazy as this human function thing is, I do find that in these sort of places where there's a lot of retired birders, whether it be Florida, Texas, and I mean super South Texas, Rio Grande Valley, or Southeast Arizona, Christmas bird counts turn up a lot of nice birds that then we find, are there. And then they become reliable to find in January, February, March, April, May. That's a kind of funky function, but it's just true. Where birders retire and Christmas counts happen, a lot of birds get found. And there we go.
Excuse me, I have a question.
Yeah, shoot.
I'm sorry, I came in late to all of this.
That's all
right. Where is the Patagonia? Is it a refuge, a wildlife area?
It's a town.
Oh,
and
not too familiar.
Yeah, Chris, is it easy to flip that map back up or a pain in the butt?
Just hang on here.
Yeah, all right.
And just go shooting all the way up here.
Boom, 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 boom. Yeah, you're giving me a quick review of the entire thing.
Ooh, nice.
But it's Patagonia is what, about an hour and a half from Tucson?
There we go. So you have Tucson here, and then Patagonia is right down here.
There, right. It's probably a 1.5, 2 hour drive from Tucson, but and then so that Patagonia area is sort of hearted there. Any other questions, folks? If not, I think we'll probably need to move to the next geographic area.
Quick quiz on what all these birds are.
Yeah. No, I think we got to move on geographically, though. Great questions. We really do appreciate it. What's up next, man?
All right.
Oh man, we're going to run a little late today, but that's okay. Go, Chris.
And the Huachuca Mountains. So again, this is a little bit east again, and Sierra Vista is on the doorstep of the Huachuca Mountains. That's the mountain range down there, and there's a big army base there, Fort Huachuca. It's a good base in which to stay, Sierra Vista. It's a bigger place, probably just under 50,000 people, but within a short drive, you're down in the Huachucas, and there are all these canyons. Ramsey Canyon, Miller Canyon, Carr Canyon, Ash Canyon. They're all full of birds, so it's a really good place to be. The hummingbird theme continues, of course. Broad-billed, beautiful bird, probably one of the more common Southeastern Arizona hummingbirds, though. This is a rarer one. It's the white-eared hummingbird, which I've seen a few times at Miller Canyon at the Beatty's Guest Ranch. That's a good place to see the white-eared hummingbird. And this is kind of the, it's a female Lucifer hummingbird. And that's another tricky one to get in the ABA, but Ash Canyon, which is one of these spots we can go and sit and watch feeders, is quite reliable for Lucifer hummingbirds, which have this distinctly downward curved bill. Miller Canyon again is a pretty good spot to find spotted owls, which is a sought after species. This is the Mexican race of the spotted owl, and they live in Miller Canyon. And we take a little walk up through the canyon and hope to spot them. There's lots of great birds in there to see, even if you don't get the spotted owl, but we do see it quite regularly anyhow. Arizona woodpecker, quite findable in the Huachuca Mountains, especially in those canyons I've been chatting about. The Pyraloxia, lower sort of, it's a desert bird, but they do come into some of the feeders lower down. And a canyon towhee, which is quite a common bird there. Not far from Sierra Vista, you've also got some really nice grassland, as shown here. And in this grassland, we look for things like loggerhead shrikes and scaled quail and Montezuma quail, which are on everybody's hit list, as well as the Lillian's race of the eastern meadowlark, various sparrows. It's quite a good habitat. And pronghorn, North America's fastest land mammal. They're quite common out in those grasslands near Sierra Vista as well. And we try and get a little higher up into the Huachuca Mountains at some point. This is along the Carr Canyon Road, because there's one bird that lives in the Huachucas that you're unlikely to get elsewhere anyway, and that's the buff-breasted flycatcher. So we try and get up a little higher to pick up buff-breasted flycatchers up in the pine forest. There he is. The smallest, I believe it's the smallest Empidanax flycatcher in North America. And you get some nice warblers up there as well, Virginias. This is a Virginias. And painted redstarts. So that's a quick rundown of some of the birding around Sierra Vista.
Chris, thanks for the quick summary of birding there. Honestly, I think Sierra Vista is just such a great place to stay because there's so many canyons sort of coming in from Mexico into the United States, and just a lot of retirees down there, a lot of birds being found. Just great birding to be had, and there you go. So we'll just take two or three more questions, and then Jesse's going to wrap up with the portal bit, which he really does know the best because it's really blossomed in the last couple of years. But any, I should probably say last 5 years. I'm getting to be such an old bird watcher. My time frames are all shrunk. Any good questions up there, folks? Out there, folks. And again, you can text them in anytime, and you can ask them in the next couple minutes. Any other questions at all? All right. Hearing none. Oh, wait, he's got a question. Oh, my gosh. My favorite question to answer. Do you have a list of birds likely to be seen by area that you can share? We will send out frequency lists probably at the start of the year, to tell the truth. And I'll probably convince Jesse to break them out by area. But truly, most of those birds, well, I mean, I think if you look at the trip description, you'll get a good feel for, the key birds by area. A lot of those birds are surprisingly widespread throughout all of Southeast Arizona, just vary a bit by habitat. But we will send that out at the start of the year, along with a copy of this video conference. Again, we want to sort of juice up I'll just be blatant. We want to juice up our sales with Jesse for late May and August. With no further ado, Chris, I'll let you turn the mic over to Jesse.
All right, Jesse, just tell me when you want, just give me a note when you want me to switch slides.
Okay, sounds good. And let me know if you're having any audio issues. I had to switch over to data because the McDonald's Wi-Fi died on me. So,
gotcha.
All right, Portal. Portal is probably one of my favorite places to bird down in Southeast Arizona. It's this tiny little town right on the New Mexico border, basically. And by tiny, I mean very small. It doesn't have a gas station there, so I always have to make sure to fill up before we get there. Otherwise, you have to drive over into New Mexico. But it does have a hotel, a general store, and a restaurant, which are all the same building. So it makes eating very convenient if we stay there in the hotel, but there are also lodges that go up into the mountains a little bit more. Cave Creek Ranch is a fairly popular one, and it's also some very popular feeders there that we can go to. They allow birders to visit even if you're not staying there. So it's a wonderful place. You can sit out there at the feeders, enjoy all the birds showing up, and it's another place where you have really good birding by elevation. You can start way down low in the desert, and early in the morning, look for Crystal Thrasher, Bendire's Thrasher down there along the road. There's a little water tank that sometimes gets some good birds showing up. But let's go to the next slide and see some of these pictures of these birds. Right around in town, we do get lots of Cassin's kingbirds flying around. There's also been a pair of thick-billed kingbirds that have started nesting right there in the middle of town. So we can see some of these good specialty birds down there. Cassin's kingbird's fairly widespread, so we might get that earlier on in the trip. But there's lots of good lower elevation birds. Let's go to the next slide. Like the scaled quail, we get those running around down low in the town. Portal is fairly low. You can go even further out into the desert first thing in the morning around the water tank and stuff down low. But you always want to do that early in the morning because it gets fairly hot down there. And then you move up the mountain as you go throughout the day. But another thing I really like about Portal is there are a lot of birders there. So that are very welcoming to visitors to come into their backyards and look at their feeders. So we can go right around this little town and just go into people's backyards. They usually have set up for you to sit and watch the birds come into their feeders. So you can watch the scaled quail come in. You can watch the verdin come in and eat jelly out of a jar. You get to see all these really interesting birds that usually you have to go skulking out and looking through the brush for. I've even seen the crystal thrasher come in and take a drink of water at some of these feeders. And if you've ever tried to chase a crystal thrasher around a bush, you'll know that they can be pretty skulky at times. They like to hide down low. So getting one actually just to wander out in the open is really nice. And a lot of these birders there, of course, they're always out looking for rarities. So you get reports of anything that might show up there. And you can just have a fairly easy morning of birding while still racking up a very impressive list. Let's go on to the next slide. So this is kind of a panorama of coming into Cave Creek Canyon, which is right there at the base of the Chiricahua mountain range. This is right where Portal is. Portal's right at the entrance of this little canyon. And then we kind of drive and work our way up the mountain. And the peak of the Chiricahuas, I think, is 9,700 feet. We don't go all the way to the peak, but we get up pretty close to 9,000 feet when we get all the way to the top. So it's a pretty decent elevation change. It's all done by driving. We're not hiking up this steep elevation climb, but we can drive our way up this mountainside and get all these different birds at different elevations. Still birding around in town. One of the hummingbirds that you get there that you don't always easily find in other places is the blue-throated hummingbird, which is now blue-throated mountain gem. And they come into the feeders at Cave Creek Ranch. They come into the visitor center for the National Forest there. So a really great place to bird and see some of these less usual birds. There's also occasionally barreline hummingbird that shows up here. Gorgeous, bright green hummingbird. That doesn't usually come down to the feeders in the town, but some of the local birders there track them down to where they believe a nesting area is a little bit further up the mountainside, and they will set out a feeder there specifically for the barreline hummingbird every year. So if there's one around, we can usually go sit at this one little feeder stuck up in the forest that the hummingbird will come in. And I drive a bright red car, and so when I've driven there before, I've had the hummingbird fly up and check out my car looking to see if it's a big giant flower or not. But that's just one of the fun things about birding right here in the Chiricahua is that there's so many birders that live there full time. They're good at tracking down and telling you where all these rarities are. Let's go on to the next picture. The greater roadrunner. This is almost always a request for anyone who has not spent a lot of time down here in the Southwest, or even for some of us who do live down here in the Southwest. It's a wonderful bird. And yes, we do get them running across the road right there in the middle of town in Portal. They will sometimes show up and pick up suet underneath some of the feeders, or we just get them walking down the side of the road, as their name suggests. Let's go on to the next slide. This is a view a little bit further up the mountainside. So as you start to work your way up the canyon, you can get some great impressive views of the canyons. And there are peregrine falcons that nest on these cliff faces. So we can always watch for the peregrine falcons up here. There's western screech owls, there's whiskered screech owls. Sometimes during the summertime, you can find flammulated owls actually up here. So I do like to spend a couple nights down in Portal. So we have a few nights to go up and chase some of these more interesting owls that might be a little bit further up the mountainside that you might not get in as many other places. Let's go on to the next slide. The crystal thrasher, this is the guy I was talking about earlier. They like to be down lower. They're not super high up in the mountains, but they'll be kind of that intermediate elevation about where the town of Portal is. So they do come into the feeders. And this actually looks like it might have been taken at one of the feeders around there.
Jasper or Rodriguez, yeah.
Yeah, right there in his yard. So that's just one of the great things about birding right there in Portal is you get these unusual birds that come out into the open. Let's go to the next page. The black-throated sparrow. We can get in this area both the black-throated sparrow and the previously mentioned black-chinned sparrow. This one comes right into the feeders. Not a rare sparrow, so we usually get really good looks at them, but they're a very stunning and impressively marked sparrow. So I always like seeing these guys when they show up to the feeders. And they have a really pretty little tinkling call. Let's go to the next one. Swainson's hawk. Yeah, usually we'll get these, especially on our drive, we usually go Sierra Vista to the Chiricahuas or vice versa, depending on which direction we plan on running the trip at the time. But they are a little bit lower down, and we usually get great looks at Swainson's hawk flying over these more desert areas and perching up right on the side of the road, so we get great views of them. Let's go to the next page. Oh, the Juniper Tit Mouse. This is a little guy that shows up at one little feeding area. The George Walker House is in the little town of Paradise, which, believe it or not, is actually smaller than Portal itself. It's about 5-6 miles outside of Portal, a little further up the mountainside. And these come right into some little feeders there. You can just go, it's a little bed and breakfast area. You can walk in and sit and enjoy their feeders. And they have the blue-throated hummingbird. They have the Rivolis hummingbird that shows up. Usually Rufus hummingbirds are flying around. And you just wait until the Juniper titmouse comes down to the feeders. You also can get good looks at the bridled titmouse there. Some nuthatches will show up, but this is the little specialty that you get in that one little corner of the mountain there, Juniper titmouse. Next slide. Montezuma quail. Yeah, we do have chances for these all throughout the trip. You can get them in Madeira Canyon, any of these areas where you're kind of moving up the mountainsides. But yeah, you can get them in Sierra Vista sometimes and here in the Chiricahuas. So just driving up the roads early in the morning or rarely coming into the feeders. I haven't seen them at the feeders there in Portal, but driving up and down the mountainsides, you can get them just tootling across the road and walking up the side. And if you're lucky enough, one will stop and give you a good look at them. They're a gorgeously marked little quail. Next slide. Greater Peewee. Yeah, this is a Peewee flycatcher that likes to haunt some of the upper elevation areas. So as we drive a little further up the mountain, we will look for a very heavy-billed peewee sitting on an open branch, giving its distinctive Jose Maria call, and they might be sitting right up there as we're driving up the mountains. We can also get western peewee up there, but this guy has a very big chunky bill compared to the western peewee, bigger bird. So we can watch as we're going up the mountain and see if there is one that's nice enough to sit on an open branch and pose for us, which as flycatchers go, they're usually fairly accommodating for giving a good look. See the next slide? And we reach the star of the show for Portal, up in the Chiricahua Mountains. You get right up to the top of the mountains. You drive right up to, usually I go to Barfoot Park, and you can get the Mexican chickadee up there. Now this chickadee, it looks like a chickadee, but it's special in that it's only visible in the United States right here on the Chiricahua Mountains. It doesn't really ever go to any of the other mountain ranges. Of course, you can go down to Mexico and see them, but if you want to get them on your ABA list, you do need to come to the Chiricahua Mountain Range right outside of Portal, and you can get those right up on top of the mountain. Now, year to year, their abundance seems to vary. I've had years where every single little feeding flock of birds going up these mountains has had Mexican chickadee once you get to some of the higher elevation ranges. But other times you have to work a little harder to pull them out, but they do live up there. So we might have to take a second trip depending on the year, or a second drive up the mountain if we don't catch them on the first day, but they are around there, and usually first thing in the morning is the easiest time to get them, is when they're vocalizing. But at other times of the year, I've had them where you get tired of seeing them because there's just so many of these Mexican chickadees in with these foraging flocks of birds. And we are going to be at fairly high elevation here again. So just like when you were on Mount Lemmon, we get another chance at a lot of those same birds. You get the olive warblers up there, you get the red-faced warblers, hermit warbler, Townsend's warbler, just these wonderful high altitude warblers. You can get band-tailed pigeon up there nice and high. And of course, the Mexican chickadee, painted redstart. And if we're super lucky, get something like a slate-throated redstart will show up there. They've been known to hang out in the Chiricahuas every now and then. And sometimes even one time it was recorded hybridizing with the painted redstart up there. It had paired up, and I don't know if it successfully raised any young, but there were the two of them always hanging out together up there. We can also get more elegant trogon going up and down the mountain here, and we can get eared quetzal occasionally. This is a fairly rare bird that is by no means guaranteed, but they do show up occasionally up here in the mountains. The local birders will find where they are. They move around a lot, so they're hard to track down, but if we're really lucky on a trip, we might be able to get eared quetzal here as well. But let's go to the next slide. Got here. Oh, the northern pygmy owl. Yeah, this is a nice little diurnal owl, so we can catch them out during the day. Usually you can track them down if the chickadees are mobbing something. You can see them up there. They do their normal little toot, 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 toot call. And here in the Chiricahuas and in Arizona in general, the northern pygmy owl doubles up its toot notes. So if you're familiar to hearing them in other areas where it's just a toot, 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 here they've changed it up a little bit. So they do toot, 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 toot. So we can listen for that while we're driving around, maybe find one being mobbed, or I've actually seen the inverse up there once, driving up and down, going up to the top of the Chiricahuas. I saw a bird dive bombing another bird. So of course I stopped because there's probably some mobbing behavior going on there. And it was actually the northern pygmy owl that was dive bombing a flicker. There is a flicker sticking its head in a hole. I don't know if it was the place the pygmy owl was nesting or if he just didn't like that flicker for whatever reason, but he was doing these little U-shaped dives back and forth, pecking this flicker on the head, and flicker didn't really seem to care, but it was a fun experience watching the pygmy owl there. Let's go to the next page. Great horned owl. Yep, this one I've actually seen nesting in a tree right over the restaurant in the town of Portal. So we can get good looks potentially at great horned owl there. And other owls we can also see around there. The elf owl will be fairly common down around Portal area. We can get some good looks at them there. The whiskered screech owls, the western screech owls. And up in the top of the mountain, I've also seen spotted owl several times. So if we don't get it in the Sierra Vista area, there's another chance for them here up on top of the Chiricahuas. Let's go to the next slide. Cactus Wren, yep, they come into the feeders. They make a nice little grinding noise call. We can hear them all over the place, but we can usually get some good looks at some of the feeders down in the town of Portal. Next slide. And the Gila Monster. I've not actually had the luck of encountering one of those while I was there. Have either Chris or David, have you been able to encounter one while you were down there?
Yeah, this photo's right in Portal.
Oh, excellent, excellent. But yeah, I've yet to run across one of those yet, but usually that's because I'm driving up early in the morning to look for chickadees at the top of the mountains. But maybe one of these days I'll get them on one of my tours. Where did you get this one in town?
It was just out of Portal on the Paradise Road.
Oh, okay. Okay, excellent, excellent. Well, maybe I'll get lucky on my next trip and encounter one of these neat little guys. I have always wanted to see one of those. Let's go to the next slide. I guess this is right at the end. This is the sunset right at the end of the day and at the end of the presentation. So one other thing I did want to mention about Portal is it's also a place that attracts a lot of astronomers. So the dark skies there are amazing. So be sure to go out at some point at night and look up at the sky, because it is quite impressive to have this amazingly dark sky to see out there in the middle of the desert. So I'll turn it back over to Chuck or Charles or whoever's in charge of the questions.
Yeah. So, I mean, I gotta say, man, I'm gonna do a couple thank yous. I'm gonna do a little administrative works, and then we're gonna tackle the last questions. So on the administrative bit is, if you think we used your full name for privacy reasons, we're more than happy to delete your name from the video conference, but I'm usually pretty careful about that. So again, if you think we've used your full name and you want us to delete you from the video, which will be on YouTube and our website, just email service@pibird.com and we will edit your name out. But all the little stuff you see on the side for participants, that's all privately held, so don't worry about that. So that's the administrative part. Too, Chris really coordinated putting together the photos, of which most of them are his, but I think Jesse and David contributed a few, I suspect several. But Chris, thanks for all that production and coordination work. And Leo, thanks for all the coaching work. And Leo's in the background there. Leo D'Souza is actually in the UK, where he has been living since the start of the pandemic. But Leo actually owns a couple eco lodges in India, and which he in a typical year would live there about half the year and the rest in the UK. But Leo's out there. Leo's been handling all the recording and coaching of our tours. So thanks to Chris Charlesworth and Leo D'Souza and Jesse Huth and David Trentley for putting together for such a nice call. And also just a shout out to Valerie for helping with the technical question of one of our users today. So thank you all very much. With no further ado, I'm gonna jump in and do some questions here today. I'm just gonna work backwards. So there was a question about the little town near Portal for the Juniper Tit Mouse. I believe that was Paradise. Am I correct, guys?
Yes.
Yeah, Paradise, Arizona. And Juniper Tit Mouse is my favorite birthday bird, which I plan to see here in not too long. Another question was Lucifer's hummingbird there year round. And there's some years it's not findable, but truly in the last 10 or 12 years, it's been hanging out pretty reliably in Ash Canyon. Am I right about that, guys?
Yeah. I've always gotten it in Ash Canyon. I haven't been there in the winter, so I'm pretty sure it leaves over the winter, but anytime we run our tours, they've been at Ash Canyon.
Yeah, so we actually don't know the full answer to that question, but I do know from basically, I would say, April through August, September, we've had pretty good luck with that bird. I mean, and I have to say, you know, a bird like that in past years, we just really wouldn't know about. I know the woman who owns that house where it's been coming into, she's just a partial year resident too. So, but with eBird, not to plug Cornell Lab more than it needs, but let's plug eBird in Cornell Lab. I mean, eBird data would answer that question better than I could, but because of eBird, quite frankly, bird finding is just easier in the ABA area than ever before. So is that a fair answer to that question, guys? Yeah, so. Sure. Nice comment about the beauty of Santa Rita Lodge and all the nice birding there. And that's it I have on text question. Anybody want to open the mic and ask some additional questions?